Yo, what's up, my good peoples? It's your boy MVP JT. I got my boy Professor Dante with me today, man. What's up, man? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. What's good, everybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of MVP University, where we talk all thing college sports, man. We're gonna chime in today on the SEC. We're going to preview the SEC. Professor Dante got some stuff up his sleeve. Like I told y'all, a very trendy topic on the yard today. So, what I'm saying? I want y'all to sit back, relax, and let's get to the show. And we're live. Yo, we're live. All right, so let's get this thing started. Last week we had a very great opening show. We had Scotty from our script coming on with us talking ACC football. Now this week, with me being in the South, a Florida fan, as y'all can see my background, you already know what time it is. We're finna chime in on the SEC. But before we do that, Professor, what you got on the yard today, man? Talk to me.
Well, as we go on the yard, last week we talked about name, image, and likeness. That was one of the big stories coming out this summer. Probably the second biggest story that was out this summer was conference realignment. So the big one was the Big Ten is officially coast to coast with USC and UCLA joining. As it stands right now, the SEC, Big Ten, both have said they're standing pat. Of course, the SEC will be getting Oklahoma and Texas next year. But I think it does raise an interesting question. And that is, are we headed toward two super conferences? But I did think about something. Conference realignment is not only happening in the Power Five. So it is also happening in the Group of Five. So this fall, Marshall, Old Dominion, James Madison, Southern Miss are all joining the Sun Belt. Next year, 2023, UTSA, UAB, and Charlotte will be joining the American. And Conference USA is there, they are probably the most rated conference of any in all of college football. So it's going to be interesting to see if after maybe 2024, if Conference USA even exists. So conference realignment is the big thing. I kind of always thought probably after, if you go back a few years, after the dismantling of the Big East, and if you remember, the ACC was really the first conference to kind of start rating other Power Fives because they took Miami,
they
took
Maryland.
Pitt, they took Virginia Tech out of the Big East. So, so in that regard, this is something that we've seen before, but this feels a little different.
So let me ask you a question. So with this alignment changing, USC, UCLA leaving the Pac-12, going to the Big Ten. They're the only two schools on the West Coast, that's going to have to come to the East. How do you think that will affect, the scheduling? Like it may be a week where they may have to go back to the East Coast. They may have to play who Rutgers, or Rutgers one week, then have to come back and play Michigan. How would that affect them academically as well as mentally? Because that's a time difference. Like, they're used to playing on the West Coast, but now you're having to travel. How do you think that's going to affect them mentally and physically on the field?
Well, so that's a good question. That's actually one reason I don't think either conference is done yet. But I think as far as the scheduling is concerned, one thing that you'll probably see, we're going to see it in the ACC next season. So rest in power, ACC Coastal, because the ACC is scrapping divisions and they're going to this one conference league, and they're going to do, I believe they're going to do a 3-3-5 setup where you're going to have your 3 non-con, 3 protective rivalries, and then you're going to have a 5-team rotation through the conference. That's what it looks like. Now, really, if you think about it, that's very similar to how the NFL schedules its teams.
Mm-hmm.
So more than likely next season you'll probably see if like you don't see a Utah or a Colorado, a Cal or Stanford added to the Big Ten, because here's the one big thing about the Pac-12 and the possibility of the Pac-12 being rated even more by both the SEC and the Big Ten. The Pac-12 media rights deal is up in 2024, so they're negotiating now. So without a TV deal, really you can negotiate packages anywhere, and in that regard, the Big Ten is like, hey, listen, the only conference that has more money than us is the SEC, and it's not by much.
Yeah.
So, pardon me. So it could be very, very possible to see more teams from the Pac-12 go. But also, I think it's important to keep in mind. I think you're going to likely see this only in football.
Really? So you don't think the basketball aspect of it, because if you look at the SEC in basketball, look at the ACC in basketball, you know what I'm saying? Those are two of the most prolific conferences when it comes to that particular sport. But then in football, SEC and Big Ten are kind of sort of those heavy hitters. So I'm glad you brought up the ACC as well, because like you said, next year they're going to a one conference schedule where it's no coastal or Atlantic division. So how do you think that's going to play out? Because now it's kind of sort of like the Big 12. You know what I'm saying? Everybody is in one league. So how do you think that's going to shake out? Because like if Clemson decides to leave, I'm pretty sure Florida State may decide to leave. You know what I'm saying? So what if they leave that particular conference? Who's the heavy hitters come 2023? You know what I'm saying? So what is your aspect on that one?
Well, as far as teams in the ACC leaving, they have the worst television deal in I would argue in all of college football.
Well, it's 50-50 right with ESPN, right?
They got to deal with ESPN, and that deal's not up until 2036. And I know that I've heard and I've read there are some teams trying to figure a way out of it, but it's expensive. And it just might not be worth it. So as crazy as this may sound, the only solution to get out of this deal is if every team in the ACC leaves. Because if every team in the conference goes, then there's no product
right
for the conference. But then that means every team in the conference would have to have a landing spot, and I'm not sure if that's the case, because probably 15, 20 years ago, when you saw like why would the Big Ten want Rutgers, right? No shade on Rutgers, but it's Rutgers.
Right.
It is the birthplace of college football, but yet and still. Well, you wanted Rutgers 15, 20 years ago because Rutgers gets you into the New York market. But markets don't really matter as much as they used to. Now it's about eyeballs, because like Notre Dame, they had games streaming on Peacock. You're going to have some games on Amazon Prime.
Apple TV.
Yeah, Apple TV is trying to get in the game. So, ESPN wants content for ESPN Plus. The rumors are Fox wants to have a stream service similar to ESPN Plus for content as well. So it's about who is going to provide the most eyeballs for this content. And that's why, although, Clemson makes a lot of sense, Florida State makes a lot of sense, Miami makes a lot of sense because they're brands. I mean, are you going to really get people hyped up for a noon kickoff between Wake Forest and Duke? I mean, I get up for it because I cover the ACC. But in general, so I think it's going to be hard to kind of raise the ACC. And it may be too costly for either the Big Ten or the SEC to want to try to jump and dive in. However, Pac-12 and the Big 12, their media rights deals are up significantly sooner. And then the golden carrot of them all, Notre Dame, their deal with NBC is up in 2025. So, and people want to know would this incentivize them to join a conference?
So I'm glad
I'm
you
not
said.
sure.
I'm glad you said that because I personally think Notre Dame will end up joining the conference simply because Oklahoma, Texas next year will be in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
That's arguably two of the biggest heavy hitters in the Big 12. You know what I'm saying? So you're basically taking away the Big 12's. I would say you're probably taking away 60% of the Big 12's revenue right there because the Texas TV market by itself alone is astronomical. You see what I'm saying? So with this realignment, do you think it's going to be a 3-team super conference? And then if it does, what would those 3 teams be? Like what other conference will merge together? Because me thinking outright thinking, it need to be 4 conferences. SEC, Big 12. You can come up with another conference, then like I guess you say the Big 24. Like they're saying Big 12 and Pac-12 joining, but it was Pac-10 rather. So the Big 22. You know what I'm saying? So I really think it should be like a 4th conference, like have the Fantastic Four of the conferences. The SEC has theirs, the Big 12 has theirs, then 2 other conferences join together to form another super conference. I think that would kind of sort of shape out the balance of the NCAA because right now, who's really governing the college football playoffs? Right now, we have 4 teams, and a lot of times it's other teams outside of that 4 that really deserves it. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Cincinnati, I really do, and last year they actually deserve to be in the college football playoff. But if you look at the other 4 teams behind them, they have an arguable chance as well. You know what I'm saying? So with this realignment, do you think the college football playoff will eventually expand sooner than later?
Oh, I think realignment is all about the college football playoff expanding. And I'm gonna tell you, and man, Jim Phillips, I believe, is the commissioner of the ACC. He voted against this initial expansion, and I know he had some reasons why he did it, but I really think he hurt his conference by doing it. Now, here's the thing: let's not fool ourselves into thinking that you're going to have college football's version of St. Peter's make a run in a 16 or 24 team college football playoff. That doesn't happen in college football. And consider the fact that there's no such thing as one and done in college football. But it's going to expand, and it's going to expand because what local markets are seeing, they're seeing fan bases lose interest sooner. If my team loses early, then I'm out of it. Or if the Pac-12 is a perfect example. The first time when the last undefeated Pac-12 team loses, the first thing everyone says, well, Pac-12 is out of the playoff. Well, with an expanded model, that won't be the case. Once again, I think the playoff is about representation, not necessarily getting more winners. I think, and personally, I'm not opposed to expansion, but I don't have a problem with the 14 playoff. I think in that regard, I think that could be very much how you market it. I remember a couple years ago, Wisconsin was undefeated in mid-November, and they lost. And really, you could market that month of November as like the knockout round for the college football playoff.
True.
Right.
True.
And you could market your conference championship games as quarterfinal rounds in many ways. The one thing I hope to see before we expand, I want to see 5 undefeated Power 5 champs and see what the committee. I just want to see which undefeated team the committee would leave out.
So when you say 5 Power 5 undefeated, okay, so that would have to be in the sense of Alabama. Appreciate it, off script. My boy Scotty checking in one time. Okay, so if you had to do 5 undefeated Power 5 teams, Alabama would be 1. Clemson may be 2. Oklahoma may be 3. Notre Dame may be 4. Who would be your 5th team?
Well, that would be even more chaos. So let's say USC wins the Pac-12, they're undefeated. Oklahoma wins the Big 12, they're undefeated. Alabama wins the Pac-12, the SEC, they're undefeated. Clemson wins the ACC, they're undefeated. Ohio State wins the Big 10, they're undefeated.
Okay.
And then freaking Notre Dame goes undefeated. I just want to see the heads explode.
That would be an interesting. I would love to be a fly in the room when the committee meets for that, because then I'm pretty sure that all 5 of those teams will have very great resumes. I'm pretty sure that all 5 of those teams will have significant wins against quality teams. So what will the committee, how would they dictate that?
They have no idea.
That would be a good one.
They would go to bcs.com and see what the computers say.
Man,
because quiet as kept, I don't know if many people know, but the BCS, although no longer official, the computer model still exists and it still tabulates 1 and 2. But I like the one reason that I've always been a fan of the 14 playoff is because in college football, I do like the idea of the playoff being difficult to get to. And one thing about it, I know people have always talked about this idea of parity in college football. There's never been parity in college football. College football has always been about talent acquisition, and has always been about whoever has the best players win. And in every era, from the time the Associated Press started declaring national champions until now, it's always been a certain group of teams that always been able to do that. So, but I think like last year was good because Alabama was there and Georgia was there, but we got 2 new faces. We got Michigan and we got Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and I think that's neat, and I do like the idea of maybe next season. I don't think this season, but maybe next season, a Texas A&M may be ready to challenge an Alabama.
Hey, Texas A&M got to do something now. Like they have to. But you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna end it with this right here with this last question for you. Okay, hypothetically speaking, the ACC, Big 12, Pac-12 all become a super conference. That's 3 conferences: SEC, Big 12, SEC, Big 10, and then whatever name Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC come up with. Let's just say hypothetically, the MEAC and SWET become one league and be that 4th power conference. Do you see something like that could ever take place, like having an HBCU conference compete against the likes of the Power 5s?
No, and I hate no HBCUs.
But I'm saying, think about it like this. Think about it like this. Good one, Conrad.
He did. He said,
"Hey, shout out to my boy Conrad. He in the background today producing the show, man."
So I'll explain to you why. Wake Forest is the smallest school in the Power 5. They have an undergrad enrollment of about 13,500 students. North Carolina A&T is the largest HBCU with an undergrad enrollment of about 12,500. So the issue, and the thing is, a lot of these schools, like they got money. Like Jackson State has money. They have a very strong alumni donor base. Morehouse has money. Morehouse, much like, they like to buy Ivy Leagues. They don't put it in football necessarily, but like some of these schools have money. But when you think about a place like Michigan that has an undergrad enrollment of like 50,000, HBCUs, they don't have the size, which means they don't have the money and they won't have the resources to be able to compete. Now, what I would love to see, and I know why they don't, but what I would love to see if if they do go to a super conference, even if they don't, I would love to see the MEAC and the SWAC champions in the FCS playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
Now, I know they don't because they don't want, and really they can fix it. I mean, I don't think it's a difficult fix. I know they don't because they want the best teams in the Celebration Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But all you do is, if you want HBCU representation in the FCS playoffs, you either take the conference champs. I don't remember right off if FCS does automatic qualifiers or not, but if they don't, you take the 2 highest rated HBCU teams in FCS polls, and they get the automatic playoff spots, and then you take the 2nd highest rated HBCU teams, and they play in the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah, true. That's a good breakdown. Like you said, because like the winner of the SWAC and winner of the MEAC automatic bids in the FCS playoff, then the runner-ups play in the Celebration Bowl. Yeah. That's a great comparison.
FAMU would have been problems in the playoffs last season.
Yeah, most definitely.
And Jackson State would be problems in the playoffs this season.
And see, reason I asked that question is because you see a lot of D1 players transferring to these SWACs and MEACs. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got a lot of guys transferring to Jackson State. You got a lot of guys going to Grambling. You got a lot of guys going to Tennessee State. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, these guys competed at the highest level. Now that's dropping down to the HBCU level, which is a pretty high level in its own rights. How will they compete against the likes of like a Georgia? You know what I'm saying? It's like I would love to see that happen one day, but you know what I'm saying? Who knows? It's up in the air. But one thing is up in the air: football is here. And guess what? We're in the South, SC country. Shouts out to my Gators. We will have a good year. Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? I appreciate Professor Dante with the talk on the yard today. Hey, man, if y'all like what y'all hearing, man, continue to check us out on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at _MVPU_. We're on Facebook at MVP University. We're on Instagram at MVP University __. Yeah, man. So you just chime in with us. Follow us on YouTube as well. Then also check out the team, man. MTMV. We got shows for days. We talk about everything from MMA to boxing to basketball, football. We got a specialty with the Kansas City Chiefs. Shouts out to Will Smith and his team, man. Shouts out to The Voice and everyone who's a part of MTMV family. Venora with the V Report. You know, Sports Talk with C 494, man. We got a team full of phenomenal individuals. Not the same podcast who does amazing work. You know what I'm saying? So just check everyone out, man. You just continue to support us as we continue to grow. All right. So next thing, you know what I'm saying, we're going to talk about the film session. In film session, we're going to break down, the SEC. We're going to do a quick little preview of the SEC, what we think who we think will come out of the SEC and how we think it will shape up. So I'm going to kick it off with a quick question to you, Professor. Mm-hmm. Will we have a rematch? Will it be Alabama, Georgia Part 5?
Yes.
Really?
Listen, I see you. I see the Gator. Mm-hmm. I see it. I got them 4th in the East.
Whoa!
I got them 4th.
Whoa!
Got them
disrespect. 4th. Who's in front of us?
Now here's the thing. I haven't looked at the schedules, so that may change.
Okay.
The Georgia. So what's happening in the SEC is Alabama and Georgia. They've really separated themselves. But the one thing that the SEC hasn't really had in a while that I think you'll see this season, they have a really good middle class. Like the SEC traditionally is very top heavy.
Top heavy, yeah.
And they're not very top heavy this year. Man, I like what Heupel's doing in Tennessee, man. I like the offense. When Justin Fuente let Hendon Hooker transfer from Virginia Tech, I said, "Oh, he's about to get fired," and he did. And I don't know if Tennessee can stop anybody, but I don't know if there's a team in the East that can outscore them. Because they are going to light up scoreboards.
So okay. So you're saying Georgia's going to win the East, Tennessee going to be number 2.
Yes.
Who's going to be number 3?
I got Kentucky third. I got Kentucky.
God.
I got Kentucky. And that is be bias. Stop it, Connie. Stop it.
Man,
because I like first of all, Mark Stoops has the best job in college football. It's not the best job in college football, but he has the best job in college football. Because the University of Kentucky has said, this is what they've said. They said, listen, we're a basketball school. Everybody knows this. But we're going to give you resources to build a program that we can enjoy before we get to basketball season. And Mark, the way he has recruited, finding guys like Benny Snell, finding guys like Josh Allen, bringing in transfers like Will Levis. I mean, the way he has built a solid physical program. They're going to be very good up front again. I'm not as all up on Will Levis as other people are. I was watching Kentucky last season, and I was like, I'm like, man, how come Will Levis couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State? Then I saw the second corner. I was like, oh, that's why he couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State.
Right.
Because listen, look, Will Levis is bombs away, but don't ask him to throw a 10-yard out because that mug's going in the stands.
And and it's crazy because, okay, I'm gonna take my Florida hat off. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put my football hat on. Will has a cannon.
Yeah, he does.
If he can ever get accuracy in that short to mid range, I ain't gonna say he'll be a Heisman type quarterback, but he'll put up some numbers for Kentucky.
I agree.
Like he'll put, and they have decent weapons. You know what I'm saying? They have pretty decent weapons. So I see why you say that, but man, you just disrespect Florida like that, bro. Like,
so, but I like where Florida's trending.
Okay.
I like Anthony Richardson at quarterback.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing, and I'm gonna he's not a comp, but a lot of people are hyped, and I know we ain't talking about the Pac-12, but a lot of people are hyped about Caleb Williams at USC. People gotta pump the brakes a little bit because I'm firing plenty of shots. But people gotta pump their brakes a little bit because if you really think about what you saw at Oklahoma, you saw Caleb Williams flash.
But look what he had around him, though.
That's true. But he flashed, but you didn't see the consistency. And Anthony Richardson, when he came in and played, you saw some dynamic plays. You saw the upside. But now this year it's his team. Emory Jones is at Arizona State. He beat out, I think Jack Sawyer was the guy who transferred from Ohio State. He beat him out. So it's his team. So now he's got to prove that he can come out game by game and be a quarterback. I like Billy Napier as a coach. Anytime you can go to a group of 5 team like Louisiana, like he did,
and
it was a mid-tier program that he made the power in the Sun Belt, and he sustained it. And that's the one thing I like about how he runs the program, because when you talk about group of 5 teams, you're talking about high variance. I mean, every Sun Belt, Conference USA, the MAC, every group of 5 conference, you always have teams that out of nowhere can win 10 games.
Right. You're right, Rob. I ain't buying that, bro. He talking nonsense. I'm letting him talk, though.
And Louisiana was able to maintain that. Now, he did take a few L's on the recruiting trail. But I think Napier, and once again, you got a new coach, a new staff, the turnovers invariable. I think Florida's gonna have a good season, but I think they're gonna be fighting Kentucky for 3rd place.
Okay, so we're gonna stay in the SEC East.
Okay.
As much as I hate to say this, and I mean I hate to say this, Georgia will win the East this year.
Emotional damage.
like I hate to say it, like they're going to win the East. Like what Kirby's doing in Athens, bro, is like he's doing what Mark Richt should have been doing. If Kirby would have had the teams that Mark Richt had, Sean Marino's, your AJ Greens, your Matt Staffords, man, bro, Georgia would have had at least 3 titles.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm gonna put my Florida hat back on. We're going to give Georgia a run for their money. We will come out number 2 in the East. Here's why I say that. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns that Napier came from, a lot of those players have transferred to us. What Conrad wilding right now. But a lot of players transferred with him. Okay, cool. So they know his system. Defensively, it would be solid. Personally, I think that if we can put up at least 21 to 24 points per game, I think our defense will be able to sustain us. Now, when it's time to go against a high-powered offense, can we put up more than that? I don't know, because we lost a lot of pieces. Copeland transferred out. We lost Pierce, he wasn't a great running back, but he was a good running back that produced for us. We lost a couple of people on the offensive line. We lost quite a few players. You know what I'm saying? So it's like now we're really rebuilding our entire team. I like what we have coming in. I do think once after the first 2 or 3 games, we'll see exactly what we have coming up. Because if I'm not mistaken, our first 3 games are. Let me see. I had it here. Oh, I think I lost it. Yeah, I lost it. I don't know where it's at. Oh, here you go. So our first 3 games, we have Utah, week 1. We have Kentucky week 2. Then we have South Florida week 3. I think those, and then Tennessee week 4. Those first 4 games are going to really determine who we are. Realistically, I see we can go if we go 3-1 out of those first 4. I think we'll be solid. Because then if we beat Kentucky, they out of the picture. We beat Tennessee, they're gone. I'm not worried about South Carolina. I'm not worried about Vandy. So we'll have a really solid chance to, and come October, if we're running everything smoothly, we can beat Georgia. We just gonna have to play. There's gonna have to be our best game of the season. Like everything is gonna have to be clicking. Special team, offense, and defense. Like there's gonna have to be the best coaching that Billy and his staff do for the season if we want to beat Georgia. Period. Do I think it can be done? Not this year. I really think that we'll be a 9-win team. I would say that we'll be a 9-win team and make some noise next year. But this year, I'm just ready for the season to get started because realistically, it's going to be a year that he's setting the foundation this year because now a lot of his players follow him from Louisiana. Next year, he's going to have to really recruit. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to see where we're going. South Carolina, they brought in Spencer Rattler. I see why. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's gonna be interesting.
That's gonna be a very interesting case because he went there. They have pretty decent weapons, right? It's a shout out to you, Conrad. They have decent weapons. Will it be enough for him to make a run? Because going into last year, he was being talked about as a Heisman candidate favorite. Mm-hmm. He was being talked about as a potential number 1, number 2 pick in the NFL draft. Then he fell off the face of the earth, and Caleb Williams took over. Now, with him going to South Carolina, would this be I'd say like a Cam Newton part 2? Because Cam Newton was at Florida. He left Florida, went to JUCO, came back to Auburn, and had probably one of the best years that Auburn ever had. Would this be a rebirth of Spencer Rattler, or what you thinking?
I don't know, because Spencer Rattler is no Cam Newton.
True.
I have mixed feelings about Spencer Rattler. So on one hand, he did win a Big 12 championship, as a freshman.
As a freshman.
People forget that. I believe they beat Florida in the bowl game.
They did. Thank you for
You're
reminding
welcome.
me.
You're welcome.
No
You're
problem.
welcome. I don't think Spencer Rattler lost the job at Oklahoma because he's a bad quarterback. Now that said, he was the only 5-star in his class. And that particular class, that was Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, that group. I was not a bumper crop of quarterbacks coming out of high school that year. So Spencer just happened to be the best of a decent, not great group, right? But Caleb Williams, his upside is tremendous. Like when you 6 foot and 210, which is basically what Spencer Rattler is, and he's not a plus in the run game. He's not an elite athlete because Caleb Williams isn't that much bigger. And then you go back before, you got little Kyler Murray. Those guys are plus in the run games. They're elite twitchy athletes. Spencer Rattler is neither one of those. Spencer is like 85% of the quarterbacks you see play quarterback. He needs the right conditions to be successful.
Yeah.
If his offensive line can't block, he's going to struggle. If he's got receivers that can't separate, he's going to struggle. There are very few quarterbacks who can play behind a mediocre offensive line and with mediocre wide receivers. He's not one of those guys. But he goes back, he's familiar with Shane Beamer from Shane Beamer's time on Oklahoma staff. I think the pressure's off, which I think will help because I don't think anyone's expecting much out of South Carolina. I got them. Let me see. I have them finishing 5th.
So I got them actually finishing 4th.
Okay, you got them finished 4th. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got them. I think Kentucky, Florida, South Carolina. I haven't really broken down like the metrics, but both all 3 of those teams are going to be somewhere between 7 and 9 wins. I think South Carolina talent-wise, they're good enough to get to a bowl game again in Beamer's second year. But I think Spencer Rattler can have a decent season. The one thing he needs to be successful, and we saw that at Oklahoma, if South Carolina can run the football competently, I think he'll be okay, and I think he'll have a decent season.
So looking at my notes here, I have Georgia winning the East. I have Florida/Tennessee as number 2. I really think that Florida-Tennessee game is going to be the game that really determines who's number 2 in my eyes. Number 3, I have Kentucky/Tennessee. One of those 2 teams will be. I just really got faith that we're going to be number 2. Like
you got the background up.
I'm going to bump that. I'm going to say how I feel it's going to be. Georgia 1, Florida 2, Kentucky 3, Tennessee 4. Missouri and Vanderbilt, they're just going to fall where they fall. But I will say this, though. They're not a good team. But from time to time, they'll sneak up and bite you and mess up what you really have going on. Because sometimes if you go in that game really underestimating Missouri, bro, they messed up a lot of people in the past. Like they're a team that really, you know what I'm saying, they don't have nothing to fight for, they don't have nothing to lose.
I don't like Missouri, but I like their coach. Eli Drinkwitz came from one of my favorite Group of 5 schools, and he came from Appalachian State. He can coach. I think they made 2 mistakes. Number one, they let Connor Bazelak transfer. I don't understand why they will let him go, and then they put everything into trying to get in JT Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
But JT Daniels ended up at West Virginia. So
which was a shocker.
Yeah, I was hoping JT went to Oregon State personally, but we can talk about my love of bad football teams at another time. I have 2 weird fascinations when it comes to college football. One is a path for bad teams to get good, and as I stated earlier by Kentucky, I'm fascinated by basketball schools who try to get good at football.
Well, since you say it like that, you got to think about North Carolina is a basketball school, but they've been really good in football. Like they've been, well, not really good. They've been a consistent 9-win team in football like the past 2 or 3 years.
They were good under Mac back in the day that he left and went to Texas. They were good at Larry. They were good with Larry Fedora, but then Larry Fedora got mad he didn't get the Texas A&M job, and they stopped wanting to coach and recruit. That's when they fell. But when you think, but North Carolina as a state, not as a program, as a state, they're very similar to Georgia in that per capita, they produce a lot of good football players. And what Mac has done, he said, listen, we're not letting these guys lead the state anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a secret weapon, former North Carolina cornerback and former All-Pro Dre Bly is on his staff. He's keeping those guys, especially the guys on the coast. They're keeping the guys that are from Tobacco Road and from the coast in North Carolina. And he's keeping those guys home, and that's why they've been good. And they're a dark horse in the ACC too, by the way.
Yeah.
But Missouri don't have a quarterback, and the best players in the NFL. And I know his name's Tyler Beatty, but I like calling him Tyler Batty. They got a kid. What's that kid's name? They got Luther Burden, who's like the number one receiver. They kept him local because he's from East St. Louis. They got him, but I don't know who they got. Who's going to throw the ball to him?
Yeah.
That's going. I think that's the biggest question for Missouri. I mean, I went to a nerd school that's good at football. Shout out to tiny Division III Wabash College as the track coach said when he recruited me, Crawfordsville, Indiana, Harvard of the Midwest, heartland of America, God's country. Listen, I remember driving to Crawfordsville. I said, God's country, he must not want no visitors. But Vanderbilt's in an interesting position. They're very similar to Stanford. They'll always lose more transfers than kids transfer in because if you redshirt and you're a fifth year, which means you got to go to grad school, because contrary to what people think, you do have to be in school to play football for a school. So they should have left the previous conference. What team should have left their previous conference?
I think you're talking about Missouri. Yeah.
Missouri won the SEC East twice. Their first 3 years in the conference.
Man, that was on
the SEC East was trash those first couple of years, but I don't think it matters. I mean, Missouri was a middle tier team in the Big 12. They're a middle tier team in the SEC.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. And not to go too far off the SEC. I was listening to Cover 3 podcast, and when you think about why Missouri would leave, why Nebraska would leave. It's a trade-off. You're going to catch these L's, but you're going to get this check.
True.
They left Big 12 for money. And as a trade-off, Missouri, unless you have those seasons where when they first came into the SEC, Florida was down, Tennessee was down, Georgia was down. I want to say that Spurrier was still coaching South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And they made a couple SEC championship games. So it's like they could win then, but when you got Georgia running at max capacity, Florida is trying to start running at max capacity again. Heupel's got Tennessee back remarkably sooner than anybody
sooner. I ain't gonna lie. I thought it was gonna be a good 3-5 years before Tennessee got.
I did too, because that roster got gutted.
Yeah, they are back though. They're in a situation where they may really be worth a team worth watching, like to maybe take Georgia. You know what I'm saying? There's gonna be a really good game this year.
Tennessee is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because you gonna see some 45, 42s, some 52, because they ain't gonna stop nobody. But man, but that Browse wide open offense, and I'm telling you, man, Hendon Hooker is gonna have a huge season for the Volunteers. But when it's all said and done, man, Georgia's got the best roster by far.
So we're gonna go on record and say Georgia. Now let's shift it over to the West. That West is gonna be competitive.
I don't think it's gonna be competitive.
I do. I think A&M maybe this may be the year A&M win the West.
Who's playing quarterback for A&M? Took you too long. That's why they're not going to win the conference. That's why they're not going to win. So people forget something. A lot of people have talked about A&M having the best recruiting class in the history of recruiting rankings.
But they
you know whose record they broke? Alabama's, who said it the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now all of those players from the best recruiting class before A&M, those guys are sophomores and juniors. And they've got the best quarterback in the conference coming back. He didn't even play for Alabama last year, but they probably got the best running back in the conference, in Jahmyr Gibbs.
But Jahmyr Gibbs he is my sleeper SEC player of the year.
So they have the best player in the country in Will Anderson.
Yeah.
Who should but won't win the Heisman. And I've always had two concerns about A&M. One is quarterback. I know that they brought in Max Johnson to compete with Haynes King, which I don't know. That just kind of lets me know I don't know how much confidence Jimbo has in Haynes King, but A&M hasn't recruited elite at receiver. And
the last elite receiver, in my opinion, they had was Mike Evans.
Yeah, that was before Jimbo.
Yeah, true.
So, and if you're gonna play with the elite, when you're gonna play with Alabama, you're gonna play with Georgia in your conference, you have to be elite at wide receiver. Now, I think next year, especially if they solidify quarterback, I think they will be really good. I will say I'm a little concerned about Alabama's receivers, but understand when I say that, I'm not talking about in conference play. I'm talking about college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
But man, listen, this defense is going to be something. And I mean, look, they got Kool-Aid in the secondary, and the name's just not a gimmick. Kool-Aid McKinstry can play. This Alabama, this is one of the better teams Saban's had. And LSU's in transition. And I think it's going to take, because that roster got gutted as well, I think it's going to take a couple years for LSU to really get back to where they want to be. I think A&M's a year away. And I think they'll be fortunate primarily because next season, Alabama is going to have similar turnover to what they had, ironically enough, last season.
Mm-hmm.
Because last season was supposed to be a step back year for Alabama. Losing Mac Jones, and they lost Devonta Smith, and they lost all that on the offense, and yet they still found themselves in the college football playoff. So, but yeah, I think Alabama, and I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's Alabama and everybody else fighting for second place in the West.
So here's my thoughts on that. I think A&M will give them a run for their money. They beat them last year. No, was it last year?
Last year.
Yeah, last year. They beat them last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have opportunity to do it again this year. I hope that they do it again this year. I feel like A&M with the chatter that Nick Saban and Jimbo had going on by the NIL deals and this, that, and the third. I think it's a bigger chip on A&M shoulders to go and say, okay, since y'all feel that way, let me show y'all what we're really made of. I think they're going to I think the game is in Tuscaloosa this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they'll go into Tuscaloosa and win. That's just my honest opinion.
This is why A&M's gonna lose by 30.
Oh, low.
This is why A&M's gonna lose by
30, bro.
And that's a little bit of hyperbole, but this is why. Number one, Papa Nick coaches best when he doesn't have to manufacture adversity.
Okay, yeah.
They lost the national championship. Not only did they lose to A&M last year, they got it handed to them a little bit against A&M. Offensive line got swallowed by A&M's D-line. Defense got pushed around a little bit. Secondary got torched. You got stuff and now they're coming to Bryant Denny without any, so they don't have any solid answers at quarterback, and they lost. Keep in mind, they lost half the D line, half the O line to the draft, breaking in new guys, and Alabama's full of experienced veterans. And you talking about veterans in the 2 deep, so you're talking about veteran, and you're talking about talent depth as well.
Yeah,
that matchup stinks for A&M this season.
So right now you're already saying Alabama's going to win the West. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel Brian Kelly is going to do within his first year at LSU? Let's look at what he did at Notre Dame first. He took that program and literally made them to one. They were already a powerhouse team because of the name. They was already a powerhouse university because it's the name Notre Dame, the gold tops. But he took that program to another level.
Listen,
but he never was able to finish the deal when they lost in the national championship. I think they went twice while he was there. 3 times.
So they lost to Alabama in the BCS championship game in 2015.
They made the playoffs.
And they went to the college football playoffs twice.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand. I kind of do understand. It seems like the only 2 coaches that can get away with being kind of gruffy is Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. Brian Kelly is not nearly as beloved a figure in Notre Dame as he should be.
Right.
Because any Notre Dame fan knows, and I'm off that narcotic, but I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I mean, you grew up in a part of Indiana I grew up in. You root for Notre Dame. If they really think about what that program was before he was hired, Charlie Weiss ran that program into the ground.
Yeah, he did.
And you had Joe Montana, Notre Dame legend, on TV talking about how the program could never get back to national prominence again. And Brian Kelly took that program and made it a perennial 10-win team.
Mm-hmm. He
had the best run in Notre Dame since Lou Holtz. The only thing Holtz had that he didn't have was national championship.
Facts.
And the landscape's markedly different. I think he went to LSU because he thinks he can win a national championship there, and he can. If Les Miles and Ed Ogeron can win a national championship at LSU,
okay, now you can't say that because Ed Ogeron, he brought in a lot of guys that transferred.
Well, I say that because Ed Ogeron's not a good football coach.
Oh, true. Okay.
Ed Ogeron is a masterful recruiter.
Go Tigers.
He was a great recruiter. You see the rankings. He could recruit. He could bring guys in, but he was not. He relied too heavily on his assistants. And when Joe Brady left and went to, I think he went to Carolina, and the offense was never the same. He couldn't find that right combination of assistant coaches. But I think this year, LSU, this is going to be a 0 year for Brian Kelly. LSU going to probably go 7-5, 8-4 this year. He's got his he got his quarterback. Oh my goodness, what is that young man's name? this is great podcasting here while I look at his name because it just escaped me when I said it.
LSU.
Yeah. Walker Howard. So Walker Howard's the big high-end 4-star for the future. I think Garrett. Well, they went and got Jaden Daniels. I wasn't a huge fan of the OC hire. They got Cincinnati's offensive coordinator, and if you watched Cincinnati's offense, it wasn't anything special.
It was decent.
Well, they had an Alabama running back in the American in Jerome Ford. That's what made the offense look good because Jerome Ford ate last season.
Oh, he did. He ate.
Yeah, but
I think, honestly, he carried Cincinnati. Honestly, in my opinion.
But I think it's going to take a couple years, and this is why I got Florida finishing fourth, ironically enough, because it's going to take a couple years to build up the trenches. The SEC is about line play.
True,
and it is. And LSU lost guys to the draft and lost guys to the portal, so it's going to take some time. But I think in 2 or 3 years, I don't see any reason why LSU, because LSU is the best. Now that is the best job in college football.
Yeah, so I would say this. I think Brian Kelly's ability to recruit was going to help him in the SEC. I think that he has what it takes to go into Alabama. He has what it takes to go into Georgia. He has what it takes to go into Florida to bring those players to Louisiana.
But he doesn't have to.
He don't. He can stay home and
Man, listen.
If he stay home, Louisiana gonna eat.
There is not a university in college football who has right of first refusal quite like LSU.
Right, true.
Like somebody told me that like every public high school is the Tigers and they all wear purple and gold. And every kid who plays high school football in Louisiana want to do 2 things. They want to play for the state championship in the Superdome and for a national championship in the Superdome, because you can do both.
Yeah.
And you want to play for the Tigers. And he can take full advantage of that. And they have a great pipeline to Texas.
They do.
He can fill out his first 22 just from guys from Louisiana. So I'm guarantee you he on the recruiting trail like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do that at Notre Dame.
Right.
And that's not a slight on Notre Dame.
It's a different animal.
Because exactly. Animal. And Marcus Freeman has proven that you can recruit at a high level to Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
It's more work because there are eligibility allowances that LSU has as a public university that Notre Dame doesn't as a private one. But I think Brian Kelly will win a national championship in 5 years, if not sooner.
I'm gonna say 3. I'm gonna say 3.
I'm 3 to 5. That's fair because unlike Les Miles and Ed Ogeron, Brian Kelly can coach.
Yeah, this is true.
He can coach.
So real quick, let me get your intake on Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Auburn. What do you think about those universities?
Well, Auburn kind of went through it. I got Auburn. Let me see, third. I got Auburn finishing 5th.
Okay, I can see that.
There once again, there's some concerns in the trenches. I like TJ Finley at quarterback. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't think he has much around him. Brian Harsin, I think, learned very quickly that in the SEC, recruiting matters in the SEC, because I think his class finished 20th, but they were like 9th in the SEC, and that's not going to get it done. And their proximity to Atlanta, they should be able to recruit at a high level. And there have been coaches there, Gus Malzahn included, that proved that Auburn can recruit at a top 10 level.
Mm-hmm.
I love Mississippi State. I love Mississippi, and one of my favorites, going all the way back to the great late Jackie Sherrill. Because once again, I have an affinity for small schools. Let somebody go to Starkville that's not ready. Mike Leach, Will Rogers, the Cowboy, and that spread, that Eric, they're gonna get them.
Yeah.
Because Mike Leach has never been known as a recruiter, But what he's found that by default, recruiting in the SEC, you're just going to get better players.
Yeah.
He's still recruiting 3 stars like he did at Washington State, but the 3 stars are better. So, he's done a very good job of finding very good talent in the state of Mississippi. Ole Miss is interesting. I'm curious to see. Number one, they got Moss from TCU, so they got a running back. I like Jackson Dart.
Yeah,
I think he's gonna beat out Luke Altmaier for that job. But my concern for Ole Miss, I don't know if they can stop anybody.
Yeah, my concern for Ole Miss is that defense. Like Ole Miss defense last year was pretty solid. They had that kid Mark Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
He was a solid linebacker. They had a pretty decent secondary. I ain't gonna say great, but they had a secondary that can contain. But I'm really interested in seeing how Ole Miss will bounce back because they lost a lot of players to the draft and graduated. I'm ready to see Ole Miss bounce back. Auburn, man, that coach had a whole lot of scandals going on this offseason, so I don't know mentally how that team is. You know what I'm saying? They got to deal with the coach's scandal.
That wasn't the coach. That was the boosters trying to fire him.
Well, true, but his name was brought up in so much though. You know what I'm saying?
Man, that was like that was unethical what they did.
Yeah,
I mean, listen. Auburn boosters got money. If you ain't want them now, buck up, pay the $30 million, get them out of there.
Yeah, that's it.
Just because you ain't want to pay the $30 million, you trying to fire them with calls. You got and everything that they tried to drum up on Brian Harsin, all of it they couldn't find anything.
Nothing at all. But that's one of the things when you're SEC, you're a high profile coach, whether you're winning, whether you're losing. Like Mississippi State, man. Mississippi State is going to be a team that air raid offense is going to really shock. Like you said, if they're not prepared, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they go into Starksville. But
Mississippi, I don't know who it's going to be because I got to look at. I don't know who it's going to be. Mississippi State going to get somebody. So
are you right now on the show? You calling the upset? Mississippi State going to upset somebody?
They're going to get somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but they're going to get somebody.
So right now, to go ahead and close out the show, we'll do a pick'em session real quick. So, Professor, who do you have winning the SEC East, SEC West, and overall winning the SEC?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, prepare for Alabama, Georgia 5. I like Alabama, and I like Alabama because Georgia's defense is going to be top 3 in the country again, but it won't be historically good this season. And I think this year, when I think Alabama's defense is every bit as good as Georgia's defense, and if that means that game is going to come down Bryce Young and Stetson Bennett. So you going with Bryce or you going with the mailman? I gotta go with Bryce on that one.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say Georgia win the East, Alabama win the West. We got Georgia, Alabama, Part 5 in the SEC championship game. I'm going to go on record and say that Georgia will win the entire SEC, but I do think they'll meet up again. That Georgia and Alabama will meet up again in the national championship game, and Alabama will win this year. I think for some reason the committee wants to see Alabama in, and somehow, some way, they get in every single year.
Well, they get in every single year because they're always one of the best 4 teams in the country.
But still, man, sometimes.
And what's so funny? I think it was the year they won with Jalen Hurts, and they didn't win the division, and they got in the playoffs. And everybody's like, "Well, they're not the 4 best, and one of the 4 best," and then they messed around and won national championship.
Facts.
So.
You can never sleep on Nick Saban and what he can do, man. But
that's true.
Hey guys, I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of MVP University, man. We got my boy Professor Dante, excuse me. My boy Connie Westside in the back, producing the show for us today. I am MVP JT. We ask you guys to go ahead and go to YouTube, like, share, and subscribe our channel, MTMV Live, MTMV the show. and the team all together. Like I said earlier, we have a tremendous amount of talent on this team, man. So y'all just chime in, whatever sport you like. I'm pretty sure we're covering it. And guess what? Next week we have a very special guest for you guys. So don't miss next week's episode. As we get ready to sign out, I am MVP JT. That's Professor Dante, and we're out. Peace.